Hello. Welcome to Mindset to Results. And today we have amazing people in our studio. Is Marnie Stockman and Nick Coniglio, who are the authors of the book Lead It Like Lasso. And we will speak about a very important topic about leadership, and not just leadership in general, but really very effective leadership and the formula of leadership that every business owner, every entrepreneur can imply in his business and see results. Hi, Manny, and hi, Nick.
Hi,
Hi,
thanks for having
Elena. Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being guest on our podcast. And I know that we are recording today amazing episode that so many people will find valuable and implementful in their business. So, yes, you are co-authors of the book Lead It Like Lasso. It means that you were very inspired by the principles which you learned from Ted Lasso show, so maybe let's start from that because I'm sure that not all people know about Ted Lasso and his show. So let's introduce our listeners first to what Ted Lasso show is and what principles of leadership he shared with the audience, and that so many people use them and it helped them to grow and scale their successful business.
Yeah, that's a lot to cover in just an intro, but we can do it. So first, we like to say that there are two types of people in the world: people who love Ted Lasso and people who just haven't seen it yet. So for the folks listening that haven't seen it, it really is. If you watch it with an eye on leadership, it is a masterclass in and of itself. Not everyone watches it for that intent. If you just want to watch it to laugh and cry and an amazing comedy, also highly recommend. But the show definitely is not the show that you just watch once and let it pass. It makes you want to be better, which is what inspired us to use it as a writing, right? You wouldn't want to write a book about something that was sort of a one and done situation. This book makes people want to be better. I'll give a little bit of what who Ted Lasso was, and then Nick can parallel it with kind of the leadership elements that we wrote the book about. So Ted Lasso was an American football coach who went to the UK to coach football, which we in America call soccer. Right? So he freely said there was an entire internet of things he didn't know about soccer. But what we quickly learn is that he knows a lot about leadership and development. And that is the magic that is Ted Lasso. So I'll pass it to Nick because he's the one that found Ted Lasso first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think our whole notion, so our book, Lead It Like Lasso, is not just reciting what happens in the show. It was pulling, like Marnie said, the lessons from the show and marrying that and accompanying that with our experience in leadership, and we have a lot of it. We not only did have we been in leadership positions, Marnie has her doctorate in leadership. I've been in executive leadership for 2 decades plus, but we married the principles of the show to our experiences in the corporate world. We also started, scaled, and exited from another business we started ourselves, and we also marry it to business principles and leadership lessons from the real world and with people that you would recognize. So the big themes are around servant leadership. How do we develop people, right? And how is our mission focused on the growth of people to lead successful organizations or teams? But the other thing that we talk about quite explicitly is about personal leadership. We have a saying in the book. There's a saying in the show in Ted Lasso, "Football is life." Our saying is leadership is life, and you cannot lead others without leading yourself first. And that is an underlying principle and framework that we strongly believe in and we talk about all the time, both in our book and in our speaking engagements beyond that.
Yes, so great principle because it is not that business is separate from you. Business is extension of who you are. Yes, extension
Yes.
of your core values, extension of your big goals and your attitude. And when
Yes.
you know how to lead yourself, then only you can lead other people. Yes, and also when you grow business, it should be totally aligned with who you are. And this is how you find people to be members of your team, and you have to uh, help them also see your values, yes, and the vision which you have, so they get excited about this. And this is how you can lead these people, yes, by being example of who you are and becoming best version of yourself and helping other people to become best version of themselves. This is how big teams is built.
Exactly. The
100%.
authentic,
Yeah.
like show up as your authentic self and project that. Like the way you project your core values, like you mentioned, is how the culture plays out in the company. And then, yeah, you want to align the folks that work with you to that. They don't have to
And
be
that's
identical, they have to be aligned.
And that is one thing that's a little bit different. Like we present in our book a framework, a leadership framework. And, if you look at a lot of leadership frameworks, they typically start with vision and strategy. And while we believe that's important, we kind of take a unique perspective of it. And this hammers home exactly the point you were saying, Elena, is we start with core values because understanding yourself, how to align your core values, ensure it's in match with culture, which is how your core values actually play out, is really the foundation to personal success. It's the foundation to organizational success, in general success overall.
Yes, and I think also to see the value in people, they see their uniqueness, yes, and
Yep.
encourage them also to see that. And because sometimes people don't know what is good in them, they don't see their potential. And I think that really the true leader is someone who see in people their those talents. Yes, and encourage them to develop those talents, to bring into the surface, and lead everyone to focus on their strength, on their genius. And this
Yeah.
is how everybody really enjoying because they focus on their strength, and other part of teams are also collected to complement each other. So tell me about your perspective about this.
Well, I think our perspective is we couldn't agree with that more. My favorite episode in Ted Lasso is actually where he puts a gift in everybody's locker, and that gift is a book that is uniquely, um, it shows the character who they could become and gives them a growth path. So we talk about that quite a bit in knowing who you are is critical, but understanding how you can use your core values to make them your superpower is really what unlocks the best version of everyone.
And I would add to that, and to what both of you are saying, one of the most famously quoted lines in the show, in Ted Lasso, is to be curious and not judgmental. And I think not only recognizing the strengths of others, but really being intentional in being curious about what those strengths are. And I think that showed out day after day after day, or episode after episode after episode within Ted Lasso, just how curious he was to find out what other people were thinking, how they felt, what their strengths were, what their areas for growth were. And when we watched the show, right, and this is why we wrote the book using that show as a relatable reference, is it very much reminded both Marnie and myself how we were successful building a company from scratch to a multi-million dollar organization. It was that curiosity, not only about people, but about environments, about customers, what have you. And that's really what what motivated us to kind of use that as a relatability reference to the book itself.
Yeah, could you please share more about how you implemented these principles? Maybe some examples or some practices where you took these principles, implemented, and you saw success, so our audience also can get some practical tips which they can also implement in their business.
So I'm going to start with, I mentioned that Ted Lasso was an American football coach, came and coached soccer, which he knew nothing about. Nick and I came from the education world and built software for IT business owners. So we did not know the space, the language, the acronyms, anything along the way. And so we had to be curious, not judgmental. And one of the things that we did was we basically just, Nick was on the development side, right? He ran all of that world, and they would build an agile product and then get feedback from the clients. And he was always asking questions and curious about how they were using it and how it could be better. So it was a conversation constantly between the company and our clients, that they were informing the product. So that whole notion of be curious. So one of Nick's superpowers is he's a great listener and a great question asker. And so he could say, this is what we think we've heard, and this is what we think you're asking for. And this is the problem we're hearing. This is the way we'd like to present the solution. So he is, so I think that's one of the elements that anyone could take away to their business, which is that if you listen to your customers and have that conversation, that can help you grow the right way, as opposed to making assumptions of what you think they want. Nick, I probably botched that a bit from your perspective. How would you fix that?
No,
Yeah.
I think you nailed it. I'm sorry, Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, I'm managing my camera just to get off, so we just continue. Yeah, interesting how we really, like I feel that not only our color matches, but really our thoughts. I was just thinking about importance of hearing and listening and feedback, getting feedback from people you work with, so you know that they really understand what you tell them, right, and what you mean, and you know that they are tuned in your vision, and also you have always exchange of the feedback, and then you can together tune that you know that everyone are in the same line.
100%. We could not agree more. And that's really, I think, where how Marnie and I came to be at this point where we are today. She mentioned earlier that we were in education technology, and tying it all together. The reason why we got out of that and started our own business is because we found ourselves in a position where our core values, which was very much uh, based upon the whole notion of helping other people. That's what drives both Marnie and myself is really service-oriented problem solving, helping other people. Um, and that was very much in conflict with the it wasn't in conflict with what the stated core values of the company that we worked for was, but it was in conflict with actually how it played out because while we were trying to service people, they were cutting our staffs by 50% and they were taking away valuable resources for us. And and that feedback loop was missing, right? Although it was recognizable, it was obvious to us, the people we were working for did not recognize that. So that's what made both Marnie and myself decide, hey, we are going to launch a company that is based on our core values. And our core values are not only about creating raving fans, but about effective communication and listening. Um, and that is ultimately uh, resulted in a very successful business initiative, and it's resulted in our whole methodology that we talk about constantly. So Elena, we are speaking the same language here. You are everything that you're saying is what we put in our book, what we advocate, what we preach, and what we firmly believe in.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And let's speak about startups, like small businesses. What you would recommend companies in the just early beginning, because we all understand how important is to create the culture. Yeah, the culture where everyone knows that they're appreciated, heard, valued, and they have there is a culture when people can openly express themselves without being afraid that they will be judged or somehow bullied. Yes,
Yep.
let's speak about this.
So, I mean, I think I'll start this, Martin. You continue here. It starts with identifying what you are as a company, your core values, and then communicating those and bringing on people who have a shared core value set. 100%, that's where it starts. We can talk about some tools, and we list a number of them in our book in terms of how to continue on with that momentum to ensure your culture is the right way. One of the things we talk about is having a personal operating system, going through that work as individuals within an organization, whether you're one person, two people, four people, what have you, and truly document and identify what motivates you, what demotivates you, what your interests are, and share that out, because it's really hard to work effectively as a team where you don't have that and you need that security, right? You need to feel safe. And part of that is communicating that out to the team, what the types of things that make you feel safe. And we have that outlined in our book about creating that personal operating system. We have so many other things, Marnie. What am I missing?
Well, I mean, right along with the personal operating system is we have a communication guide, which is sort of a working with me doc. And the importance of this, we didn't have this when we hired our first employee, but we did when we hired our third employee because we had to fire the first one. And we had to let the first one go because I thought, we were working remotely, thought we had communicated the expectations, the goals, the tactics, the strategies, but the job wasn't getting done. And so, and I definitely take that to heart. She reported to me. And when it didn't work, we did a lot of reflection on how could we have avoided that. And and some of it came down to communication and expectation around communications. So we built a communication guide, and onboarding started with them seeing our community, like this is how to communicate with me, was very clear of what the expectations were. And then we would have the folks we onboarded then develop their own communication guide. And if folks want a blank template, they can check it out at leaditlikelasso.com. It doesn't take an email or anything. You can just go see what those look like. But to understand how folks communicate and that we're open about like the likes, the dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, etc., made for better company culture because they could see how we were supporting our core values.
Okay, great. So now we will pause this. Yes, and we discussed about leadership that starts from yourself. So let's speak more about this. What is included in self-leadership?
Well, you've mentioned the first part, which is core values. It's really understanding yourself. As a matter of fact, Harvard Business Review says that the number one indicator of leadership success is self awareness. So we're not just suggesting it off of what we've seen on a uh, fictional TV show, right? There's studies behind that. So you have to start there for sure and understand how those behaviors play out, but beyond that, there's also needing to set a vision for where you want to head. So we talk about setting SMART goals, looking 5, 10 years out and then breaking that down into specifics and tactical pieces of what you need. But one of my favorite parts to think about is what we talk about at the end of the book, which is legacy. Think about who you want to be when you retire, or what do you want in your obituary to be said about you, because that helps you create those guide rails that will really help you make decisions that align with your core values.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, I'll just I'll just add to that. I think it's important when we talk about personal leadership, and we talk about this quite a bit. It's there's more than one type of more than one way to lead. And in reality, everyone is a leader. Whether you're in the boardroom, what we think of traditional leadership as a CEO or something, or a locker room, or a classroom, or even your living room. It doesn't matter where you're at. Everybody is a leader themselves. That's the first thing to recognize. And then the second thing is, like I said just a second ago, there's different ways to lead. Like Marnie has a very different leadership style than I have, and that's fine. That is absolutely okay. I am at my heart, I'm quite an introverted person, but that brings some different skills than somebody who might be more um, extroverted and more life of the party. I think one thing we try to point out in the book specifically, we do it through a character assessment. Which type of leader are you? Is really to, number one, accept the fact that there's more than one way to lead, and number two, once you do that, understand who you are, understand what your strengths are, and then also understand what your areas for improvement are.
Yeah, great. And also, I would add that attitude is important. Yes, attitude. Yes,
Yes.
attitude towards yourself, towards life will determine life attitude towards us. And even today, yes, different things can happen. Yes, even camera can get off during podcast. And there are different way. Yeah, somebody can just freeze and just start panicking what to do,
Yeah.
yes, or you know that there are always the way, and you just can cool analyze what you can do better and find solution. Yes,
Yeah.
without reacting and without experiencing different negative emotions. And so I think this is very important for the leader to know how to have the right attitude for different situations, for unexpected situation, for different conflicts between people, how to manage them, and it also relates to emotional intelligence, because I think emotional intelligence for leader is very important. Yeah, because different situation can come and you have to not only control yourself but also uh, show other people, yes, that everything is okay, everything is under control, that they can really come down and know that there is the guidance and all will be sorted out.
Yeah, we could not agree with you more. I mean, we have two big parts of our book that are dedicated towards adaptability and resilience, which is how you do respond to something, right? And then we have another section all around emotional intelligence. And in reality, at the end of the day, those who increase and expand and continually develop their emotional intelligence really are the ones that um, are not only successful but are living, really the least anxious life, right? Least stressful life. So we could not agree more with you. And the beauty of it is, just like leadership, you can develop these skills over time. You have to work on it. We also talk about continuous learning. It's critically important that you keep expanding and expanding. And people aren't just born emotionally intelligent, right? Their EQ, some have an inclination to be more at the higher end of the EQ scale, but everybody can learn to develop those skills, and that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, definitely. Mani, do you want to add anything about this?
Well, I think the last thing that Nick said is critically important, that you can learn and work on these skills, but you have to work on those skills, right? one thing I found interesting is when we were researching some of the servant leadership traits, empathy comes up. One thing that Ted Lasso was known for was being empathetic. And I don't know that people would think about, how do I practice being more empathetic? How do I work on that? That sounds hard to do. Is that something just I'm just naturally supposed to feel empathetic? And I read a study that reading fiction books is actually a strategy for how to improve your empathy. Because when you read fiction, you are putting yourself in the mindset of someone else and you can see a story outside of yourself. And I thought, well, that's a great practical, easy to do tip that you might not think about while you're just binge reading some fiction story for fun. You actually are working on your own empathy at the same time.
Yes, I like that you said about that empathy, and I believe that empathy starts from empathy to yourself. Yes,
Oh yeah. And I mean, that's where, so Ted had panic attacks in the show. I've had panic attacks. Nick has had panic attacks. And much of that comes down to really how you are not being empathetic to to yourself. So I think that is really important to think about. Yeah.
Yes, because in business, I believe that it is not about pushing hard something. It is being aligned. Yes, aligned with what you do and with your goals. And this is doing things naturally. And many business owners, they have big goals, but they think that I have just to push hard. I have to do more. I have to demand more from people. And usually it just brings to burnout and different depressions and insomnia. Yes, so but when people learn to be have empathy for themselves, and celebrate even small wins. Yes, because sometimes we have these saboteurs, like for example, judge, which always says that it is not enough. Like you achieve something and it say, "Oh, you could do better." Yes, and so I think this is understanding in which state, like ability to shift from that saboteur's negative state to a sage state that is positive, to see people what they already accomplished and celebrate their wins and create that positive environment that people are encouraged. They're not just pushed and just you can do better. Yeah, but really encouraged to do better because they see their potential by celebrating what they already done.
So you mentioned something that brought another point to mind. You know, we talked about, Nick mentioned how we have a character assessment in the book that you can see which type of archetype of leader that you are. And it's critically important that not everyone in your company is the same type of leader, because you really need different minds to look at angles different ways. And so that is one thing why Nick and I work well together. Ted Lasso had his Diamond Dog, so that was his challenge network or support group. And being able to, uh, when you can be empathetic and recognize the strengths of others as well as yourself and how they fit together, right? It's rising tide lifts all ships, because you need to borrow from everyone's strengths and to support your own weaknesses by having a network. And I think that's another thing that folks can do for both personal leadership as well as within the company, is to really surround yourself with those folks that support you but also push you to make you better.
Yeah, great. And I also know very interesting tool or technique to create empathy. And this is to look at your photo when you were a small child.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yes, yes. So when you look at yourself as you were a small child and you look in your eyes, like this is such a like eyes with so much like purity, the essence of who you are in that small
Yeah.
age, you naturally feel empathy to that child, and then you understand this is you. So you look at yourself at that pure yourself, yes, like that the child. And also everybody in company can just bring their photos and people can
Yeah.
just look at their photos and see that as their child. So it brings like it is automatically put us in that sage sage mode because we don't judge charge or child. We don't just do critics to critic to children, and like seeing them as that small child, like maybe 2 years, 3 years old. It also helps to be in that stage of love and empathy. Yes, this is one of the techniques.
So I love that, right?
Same.
Because it's something actionable. And I think when we talk about anything personal development wise, right? How to grow, personal growth, how to become the best version of you, right? It's all about, one thing that's very important to Marnie, both Marnie and myself, is let's brainstorm and provide actionable ideas. And looking at that photograph of yourself when you're younger in terms of developing empathy, that's a great way to do that. It's a great activity. Marnie and I in the book we talk about we don't just talk about like identifying your core values or SMART goals or understanding what your legacy is. We also give people actionable activities to actually do that. And they're not just, you know, boring, let's fill out this form type activities. They're fun activities. Looking at yourself as a child or having the company bring in photographs of everybody who's younger, that's kind of fun. And that is one of our core values is to have fun. And we might just steal that, Elena, because I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because when you look at the child's eyes, you just see the true essence, yes, who you are. And this also can remind people that what they were dreaming about. Yes, to
Hmm.
again, like inspire that in themselves to dream, because we know that we all were dreaming when we were very small. But what happened when we went to school? We told that, oh, like stop daydreaming. Dream is just for small little babies. And now you have to be logical, you have to know how to do things. And from then we forgot how to dream. Yes, and then
Yep.
people become like those robots, like those machines that don't often go for even imagination, to visualization, to see how their life can be, what they really can be. Yes, and so bringing those small children pictures, it can really remind them who they truly are. Yes, without all these viruses which came after when we grow up. Yes, we accumulated so many different cliches, what who told
Yep.
about what our failures were. So it is really so good when we come back to who we truly were and who we truly are, and again start dreaming, and then connect our big dreams to company big dreams. Yes, and our values to company values, and this can create this loving atmosphere where everybody can grow and achieve their dreams, helping company to achieve theirs.
Love it.
Love that.
Yes, and another question, I think last question, because this is really so amazing topic. And another question about resilience, yes, because we already discussed that resilience is so important. So, what you would suggest from your experience and also from Ted Lasso show, how people can uh, cultivate their resilience? Because this is a very important feature and quality of every leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the single biggest thing that you can do to become a more resilient person is to go after things and take risks. I think the factor of the matter is, and I this was me when I was younger in my 20s, many years ago, right? I was very safe. Security was a big deal to me, right? But you realize over time that when you then get put into a situation that stretches you or an issue, a situation of stress or challenging situation that you're really not used to, being able to brainstorm ways on how to get beyond that. So I think it's really hard to develop resilience unless you put yourself out there and set higher and higher goals. Now, obviously, you need to accompany that with the right attitude. You talked about this earlier, Elena, being positive. But from our perspective, it is very important from a resilience standpoint to put yourself in a position to have to be resilient, to take risks. They don't have to be crazy risks. I'm not going to, jump off of a bridge and hope I can dive perfectly into a sea of water. But put yourself in a position, both from a personal growth and a professional growth standpoint, where you know what, I might get called out on this. I might not, it might not go exactly the way I want it to go because at the end of the day, resilience takes practice. And your job is to continually raise that bar, raise that bar, raise that bar. So you have to be resilient. I yammered on there. Marnie, give us the right answer on
No, I
resilience.
think I think that's a perfect answer. Taking risks, it's really you grow when it comes to failure. One other thing that comes to mind is we've recently talked about this idea of a pre-mortem, which is instead of waiting for something to go wrong and then figure out what just went wrong, when you're thinking about trying something new or putting something out in the world, think, well, like let's assume it went wrong and problem solve what you could have done to avoid it or how you would respond to it. And when you realize that the worst case scenario is really not the worst case scenario, then I think you're willing to take more risks.
Yes, I agree with both of you. And I also can add another perspective to this that resilience is built when we detach from current situation. Yes, when we see where we want to go and we think and feel and act from that place. And when we also have understanding that in why we need big goals, because big goals are given for us to grow. If we just looking for certainty, there will be no grow in that because we will just do what we already know to do. Yes, and we set just small goals which we know logically how to achieve them. So there is nothing new and there is no growth. But really, when we go for big things, yes, and then we can think from there, this will help us to be resilient because we will not react to small things because we're not at this level, we're already there. Right? So this is
Yep.
how we get excited, inspired. So it gives us that fuel to go through even when it feels hard.
So I'm going to throw one more Ted Lasso quote in there. When he started this, they said it's a lot like change. Change is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while you're doing it, you're probably doing it wrong, right? So you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I think is what you just said.
Yeah, definitely. And also another thing that I like how Steve Jobs said that you can never connect the dots when you look forward. You only can connect the dots when you look backwards. So initially, you have to trust that somehow these all dots will be connected. So this is
Yeah.
exactly about uncertainty because you just have to have faith. Believe in yourself that you can do it because if you really have that big dream, big desire, as Earl Nightingale called it, burning desire, it means that you can give it, you can do it because it wouldn't be given to you if you wouldn't be able to do this. It means that you are able to do that. And then you should have faith that you know that there are invisible forces, God, universe. If you know how, like the laws, if you do right things, take first step, you will see that other door will open. So you don't need to see the whole the uh, route, yeah, all these steps. Just focus on first step, do it right, and see what there will be revealed.
Amen.
Yeah, another principle for resilience. Yes, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure that our audience will get so much value of this episode. Is it something that you would like to share with before we wrap up? Maybe advice or something that you want to share?
Well, I think you brought up the one word that Ted Lasso is known for, which is believe. So that's a good one. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough, Elena. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and I'm looking forward to see you in panel discussions. Yeah, I invite you as to be guest on our panel discussions where we will speak about leadership. So we meet other world-class experts. It would be great to continue this conversation in different format.
Thanks so
Sounds
much.
excellent.
Yeah, you're welcome. All the best and see you soon.
Thanks.